This is the part 2 of the read aloud for the LAC 2 Unit 2 test. This read aloud will include the cold read entitled Secret in Slovakia and questions 9 through 15. Read the story, then answer the questions. Secret in Slovakia. After 17 hours of travel, we'd finally made it. It was 10 o'clock at night, and we were in Slovakia, standing in front of Great Aunt Gertrude's house, which stood at the end of a long, narrow street and looked to be made of ancient stone. The wind came whistling through the trees that surrounded the home in a way that reminded me of an eerie fairy tale that my grandmother told me when I was a child. In the dark, with its front windows and double-arched doors, the house looked as if it were about to eat us. 2 days later, when we left, I would look at the house in the daylight and think it was very charming. Right then, I wanted nothing more than to find the inside much less frightening than the outside. I was in Slovakia with my mother and uncle to prepare Aunt Gertrude's house to be sold. 2 years ago, when she became increasingly frail, she had come to the United States to live out her days close to the only family she had, my mother, my uncle, and their families. I had seen Aunt Gertrude more in the past 2 years than I had ever before in my life, and she could be terrifying, often wearing a mean scowl on her deeply lined face. She never had children of her own and worked as a nanny when she was young. Although those children had to be my parents' age by now, I still felt bad for them. My grandmother had come to the United States when she and Gertrude were in their 20s, and Aunt Gertrude rarely spoke about herself, so we knew very little about her adult life. Although I've never felt particularly close to Aunt Gertrude, it was comforting to know she was close by in her last years. And now that she was gone, we were apparently going to discover the secret she had been keeping from all of us. I'll never forget the last moments before she died. She knew the end was near, and she was saying goodbye to all of us. Then she turned to my mother, grasped her hand so tight that I saw surprise on my mother's face, and she said, "I'm so sorry. You'll find out all about it. I did what I thought was best. Forgive me." This was not the time to press Aunt Gertrude for details, and just a few minutes later she died peacefully. Now we were at the house to gather her paperwork and retrieve some personal items that she'd left behind. As we crossed the threshold, I realized my wish about the inside of the house, not being frightening, would not be coming true. The furniture, all draped in sheets and lit only by the moonlight, looked like ghosts hovering in each room. It was so still we could hear the tick of the grandfather clock as we moved through the house. The three of us walked slowly and quietly down the wide hallway to the kitchen, as if we were afraid of waking someone. My uncle turned on a light switch as we walked into the kitchen, and the bulb instantly blew out, sending my mother and me into a momentary panic. We all composed ourselves and made our way to the library. Aunt Gertrude had directed us specifically to this room so we could gather certain books and other items that she wanted to remain in the family. As we crept into the room, we all noticed it at once. On the desk there was an old wooden box with a note on top in Aunt Gertrude's handwriting that read, "Forgive me." I had never asked my mother or uncle what they thought we might discover at Aunt Gertrude's house, because I was certain they would not know. Aunt Gertrude had always been such a distant, shadowy figure, even when she was living in the United States. Now we were about to decide and find out what secret she had kept from us. My uncle opened the box and pulled out a stack of old papers. On the top was stationery that looked as if it were about 50 years old. The letterhead had a picture of a building with the words, "Bratslava School for Girls." The second paper in the stack was a letter from Aunt Gertrude addressed to our family. In the letter, she explained she had been bequeathed a large sum of money when she was a young woman by one of the families for whom she had worked. Aunt Gertrude had used it to open a school for orphan girls in the city where she had grown up. As he read the letter, my uncle paused at the end of almost every sentence. It was all so much to take in. Aunt Gertrude explained that she knew many orphans as a child growing up in the city, and when she was given the money, she immediately knew what she would do with it. The letter said that her only fear was the family would be angry with her for not sharing the money. We all looked at each other in disbelief. A woman we had all feared had sacrificed what could have been a luxurious life in order to help orphans in her homeland, and she worried we would be angry about it. A few days later, we returned home with the surprising news about Aunt Gertrude. The news made me regret not knowing her better when she was alive, but at least our family now knows what kind of generous person Aunt Gertrude really was. Question 9. Why does the author use first-person point of view in the story? To make the story more mysterious and thrilling, to give readers insight into the feelings of each of the characters, or to give readers access to the narrator's private thoughts and feelings. Question 10. What evidence from the story shows the impact of the first-person narrator? The furniture, all draped in sheets and lit only by the moonlight, looked like ghosts hovering in each room. Although I never felt particularly close to Aunt Gertrude, it was comforting to know she was close by in her last years. The letter said her only fear was the family would be angry at her for not sharing the money. Question 11. What is the best description of the impact of the story's climax? It raises the stakes and ratchets up the tension in the story as the narrator wonders what is in the box. It sends the characters in search of a solution to the mystery introduced in the passage's complicating incident. Or it provides an unexpected twist that dramatically changes the narrator's view of Aunt Gertrude. Question 12. Which sentence from the ending of the story best explains the surprising realization about Aunt Gertrude? I had never asked my mother or uncle what they thought we might discover at Aunt Gertrude's house because I was certain they would not know. Aunt Gertrude had used the money to open a school for orphan girls in the city where she had grown up. On the top was stationery that looked as if it were 50 years old. The letter had had a picture of a building with the words Bratislava School for Girls. Question 13. Which statement best describes the effect of the story's exposition? It leads readers to wonder what awful deed Aunt Gertrude must have committed. It leads readers to feel sympathy toward Aunt Gertrude. Or it leads readers to marvel at why Aunt Gertrude lived in Slovakia. Question 14. How does the narrator's or the author's use of foreshadowing in the opening paragraphs affect the story? It creates excitement by revealing the narrator's hopes of receiving part of her great-aunt's estate. It creates a sense of joy and anticipation by hinting that the narrator will be reconnected with her great-aunt. Or it creates suspense by suggesting that the narrator's view of the house will somehow change as a result of the experiences inside. Question 15. How does the author's use of flashback affect the story? It adds tension and suspense by making the narrator and her relatives uncertain about exactly what they're going to find in Slovakia. It ensures clarity by providing all necessary background information in the opening paragraph. Or it generates uncertainty by forcing the narrator and her parents to doubt what they remember about Great Aunt Gertrude. Please check your answers to questions 9 through 15. If you have any questions, you can direct them to your LAC 2 teacher. And this concludes the recording of the second part of the Unit 2 test.